Welcome to Trio Maryland's July Zoom meeting. It's great to see everyone. I'm Marty Marin, and this is my wife, Michelle, and we manage Trio Maryland. We'd like to welcome all our members and guests today, and thank you for attending. Today's topic is going to be mindfulness, grounding, and being in the moment, and it will teach us ways to improve our health. We are glad that you could join us for this meeting. Our August topic is going to be infectious risk, CMV, a topic that we all should be well versed on. But now I'm going to turn the meeting over to Michelle to introduce our speaker.
Good morning. Good to see everyone. Today's guest speaker is Casey Saylor, who has a master's degree in social work. Casey is the Older Adult Project Manager at the Mental Health Association of Maryland, where she oversees the Vibrant Aging Peers Program. In this role, Casey provides community education, manages volunteers in the Connections Project, and works to enhance Maryland's peer support model to better serve older adults with behavioral health needs. She is a University of Maryland School of Social Work graduate and a member of the Anti-Stigma Project. Casey is a repeat speaker and has provided excellent information in the past. Don't forget to check out the Mental Health Association of Maryland's website, which has a ton of useful information for older adults. The website is www.mhamd.org.
Thank you so much, Michelle and Marty. It is a pleasure to be here with you all again. I always look forward to meeting with the Trio group. And today we are going to be talking about mindfulness. This is one of my favorite topics. Can I get a thumbs up that you can see my purple slide? Wonderful. Yay. Okay. So we're going to be talking about mindfulness, grounding, and being in the moment. We'll talk about some of the science behind what mindfulness is, how it works, why it works, and then I will give us a couple practice exercises that you are welcome to do together that I will lead us through. Now, Michelle mentioned to me that she sent out our mindfulness fact sheet yesterday to all of you in email. So that is basically the super condensed snapshot version of this presentation. So I invite you, if you are a note taker, you're welcome to take notes, and don't feel like you have to, because that fact sheet has the major points and the exercises written down on it as well. All right, so as Michelle mentioned, I'm joining you from the Mental Health Association of Maryland today, and MHAMD has been around for over 100 years. And they are an education and advocacy organization. And so I'm joining you today as part of our public education team, focusing on older adults and aging. However, we also have education teams that focus on things like children's mental health, maternal's mental health, and general adult wellness as well. So if you are interested in learning more about MHAMD, I put the link in the chat, as Michelle mentioned, mhamd.org. You're welcome to access our publications, which the mindfulness fact sheet is just one of many on so many different topics related to the brain. So you're welcome to check those out on our website. You can download them right from the website or request printed copies. And we also have an events page as well. Zooming in on aging, our kind of aging subpage is mdaging.org. And we have events going on every month related to the brain and how it is impacted by getting older. So this book that just came up on the right, I want to highlight one last publication for you. This is our Mental Health in Later Life Guidebook. If you have a brain and it's getting older, or you know someone who does, this is a fantastic resource, just diving into the basics and the science and the things that we can do to take care of our brains as they age. So you are very welcome. Again, download that from our website or request free printed copies.
Casey, can I interrupt just for 1 second?
Of course.
One of our attendees is saying they are having a hard time hearing. I don't know if you can increase your volume a little. And no one else has mentioned it, so I don't know if it's an issue possibly that they are only having, but I just wanted to mention it.
Okay. All right. I will project a little more. Is that better? Okay. Awesome. Sounds good. It's difficult to know what decibel when there's a microphone right in front of your face, so that's helpful feedback. Thank you. Well, without further ado, let's talk about the brain and how it works a little bit. So how many of you, show of hands, are familiar with cortisol? All right, a couple folks, awesome, a couple folks not. So I'm very excited to teach you about this. Cortisol is a hormone, it's a chemical in our brains and in our bodies, and it's known as the stress hormone. It is designed to let us know when we are in danger, and it's connected to our fight, flight, or freeze response. And so when you are driving and someone maybe gets a little close to your car and you feel that kind of surge, that is cortisol flooding your system saying, oh, something dangerous just happened. What do I do to stay safe? Okay, it's activating that fight, flight, freeze response. Now, cortisol shows up in our daily lives every day. For some of us, all day. And when we, thinking back, right, when we were humans who were walking through the woods and life is good and a tiger shows up, that cortisol kicks in, we fight, flight, freeze, we get away from the threat, and then it leaves our system. Okay, we do not live in the woods with tigers anymore. Our cortisol causing threats are a little different and they tend to hang around a lot longer. And this results in something called chronic stress for many of us. And so with that in mind, it's very important for us to know that cortisol is a natural hormone that shows up in our system when stress occurs, and that it can collect over time. If we aren't, being able to walk away from the stressful thing and allowing it to kind of flush from our system. And that buildup can be really detrimental to our health. So there's also something called the amygdala surge or hijack. And I'm smiling because this is one of my favorite things that I learned in school. It just explains so much for me. And the amygdala hijack happens when strong emotions, things like anger, fear, excitement, these emotions make it difficult or impossible to think straight. Now, it's also tied to that fight, flight response, and it can impact us in an emotional and physical ways. So to give you a personal example, when I was, I think, like 8 years old, my hair used to be down to my waist. And I remember brushing my hair and there was this big knot in it. And it felt like an eternity. I was trying to brush this knot out of my hair and it just wouldn't go anywhere. You know what happened? I got mad. I got so mad and so frustrated. And, if from someone looking at the outside, you would say, oh, I see your frustration. Why don't you try this different approach? But in the moment, my amygdala surged and I got so frustrated. I ripped that hairbrush out of my hair with a lot of my hair, threw it across the room and put a dent in the wall and broke my hairbrush. And that is a classic example of amygdala surge because the amygdala surges are often out of proportion to the incident that is causing it, right? This shows up in things like road rage is a very common amygdala surge experience. Maybe you're trying to open the damn can and it just won't open and you slam it on the counter, amygdala surge. So I just want to give you this language when you feel that kind of overwhelm emotion with an action perhaps tied to it that you wouldn't typically do, that is an amygdala surge occurring. And when that cortisol is present, which it often can be. Let's say I just got in a fight with my sibling right before I was in that hairbrushing incident, and so my system is flooded with cortisol. When cortisol is present too, it makes it even more difficult to think straight, to notice that we are experiencing an amygdala surge and to interrupt it. So one more element I want to name that makes it even more difficult is alcohol. If we're drinking alcohol, it dulls that logical communication even more. The frontal lobe of our brain is responsible for good decision making. And when we are experiencing that flood of cortisol and when we're drinking, the volume on this frontal lobe is turned down. Okay, so you may hear yourself thinking, this doesn't seem proportionate, but guess what? You're not listening to that thought. You're listening to the amygdala surge, which is really loud. Okay, and the good news is that we can learn to recognize the amygdala surge. We can calm down our amygdalas, which can help to control the amount of cortisol in our systems and return us to thinking clearly. It helps to turn the volume back up on our frontal lobe so we can hear those thoughts better and choose to engage with them. Now, one tool for doing this is mindfulness, grounding, and being in the moment. Okay, so I tell you these things about cortisol and the amygdala so you can start to recognize when they show up in your own life, and use some of these exercises that we're going to talk about to interrupt it when you notice and get back to thinking clearly. So this quote, I really enjoy. It reads, "Now and then it's good to pause in our pursuit of happiness and just be happy." So mindfulness is a state of focus on the present moment while calmly acknowledging and accepting our feelings, thoughts, and bodily sensations. It includes things like awareness, tuning in to what's happening in our present moment, such as sights, sounds, smells, physical sensations. It engages our senses in that way. Mindfulness also includes focus, paying attention without thinking about the past or the future, really being in the moment. It includes acceptance, accepting whatever you may be thinking or feeling without judgment. Key word there, without judgment or trying to change it. And lastly, mindfulness includes observation. Unpleasant sensations are always going to be there, perhaps, but we can recognize them, whether it's a thought, a feeling, we can recognize them as temporary and observe them objectively without reaction or judgment. Norman Lear illustrates the idea of mindfulness, I think, really beautifully. He writes, "When something is over, it's over, and you're on to next. Whatever next happens to be." I thought if there was a hammock in the middle of those two words, that would be the best definition I know of living in the moment. So what practically does building that hammock do for us? Science tells us that mindfulness reduces stress, reduces those cortisol levels. Remember, cortisol is the stress hormone. And as I mentioned, stress can have serious effects on our physical and our mental health. This can have health benefits such as lowering our blood pressure and strengthening our immune system, because that chronic stress that I mentioned actually lowers our immune system and has a negative impact on our cardiovascular system. So it can be very important to actively manage that. Mindfulness can also help us to improve our mood, and it can help reduce mental health conditions like depression and anxiety. It is shown to improve our brain function. It builds our ability to focus. Remember, that was a key element of mindfulness. And over time, research tells us that meditation can sharpen our memory and improve our mental performance. And lastly, this one is I find infinitely amazing. Mindfulness is shown to improve our ability to cope with pain. Now, the research, I was reading the study specifically. It came out of the University out of the Midwest. I can't recall which one right now. But they were meeting with pain center patients. And these folks would come in and they signed up for the study. And they would ask the folks, tell me about your pain. And the kind of typical things that you hear is like, oh, it's like a lightning bolt, it's unmanageable. Like in America, we tend to have a very much like make this stop idea, an approach to pain. And what they did was they started asking the participants questions. Well, tell me where the pain is. And what does it feel like in that particular location? They start asking these questions and they started getting responses as, oh, well, it's really focused in my right knee. And, it feels really warm. It's hottest in the center, and that warmth kind of expands outward. And that warmth is in my shoulder too, but it's not as hot as in my knee, right? So they started getting these really curious, descriptive responses. And what they found is that by answering these questions, these folks were able to change their relationship with pain. It was no longer that lightning bolt, it was that warmth. And you know what? That warmth was more manageable than the lightning bolt to deal with. And the research, the conclusion of that study showed that folks with chronic pain who practiced mindfulness meditation, that was just one example of that mindfulness exercise they were leading them through, these folks actually reported less severe pain and pain-related distress. Now, grounding is a coping strategy that really focuses on that present moment. One of the pillars of mindfulness is coming into the present moment, not the present or the past. And grounding is one strategy to do that. So there's something really fascinating that happens with our nervous systems. And so the sympathetic nervous system is related to our body's rapid involuntary response to dangerous and stressful situations. The sympathetic nervous system is the one that is kind of turned on when we experience that amygdala surge or a stressful situation, and it is responsible for bringing that flood of cortisol and some other hormones to the forefront, raising our alertness, our heart rate, sending extra blood to our muscles, preparing us for action to run from that tiger, right? That is our sympathetic nervous system being engaged. Now, the opposite, you could say, of the sympathetic nervous system is the parasympathetic response system. This is the part of our nervous system that works to calm the body down. It helps us to conserve energy, to restore our nervous system to a more relaxed, neutral, and efficient state of being. This is what you could think of turns on when we practice a kind of meditation and we feel ourselves calming down from that elevated space. That's our parasympathetic response system turning on. The amazing thing is that when we practice kind of turning on this parasympathetic response system, we can actually develop this to be our dominant state of being. And there are lots of health benefits to really spending time in this calmer, more restorative place with our nervous system. Grounding, research tells us, stimulates this parasympathetic response system. It moves the focus of our thoughts from everything else to the here and the now. And the beautiful thing is that the parasympathetic response system turns on when we are feeling safe. And it actually reinforces our brains and our body's understanding of, oh, I'm safe. I don't need this fight, flight, or freeze response right now. And in turn, it reduces our feelings of distress and anxiety. Dr. Sarah Allen writes that grounding basically means to bring your focus to what is happening to you physically, either in your body or in your surroundings, instead of being trapped by the thoughts in your mind that are causing you to feel anxious. It helps you to stay in the present moment instead of worrying about things that may happen in the future or events that have already happened, but you still find yourself going over and over them in your head. So I want to invite us to practice a grounding exercise right now. And again, this is an invitation. If you're not feeling it, that's fine. But I want to invite you to notice your breath. You have been breathing this entire time, at least for the last 20 minutes you've been listening to me. And I want to invite you to just notice your breath now. Bring your attention to it. As you breathe in and out, you don't need to change it in any way. Just notice yourself breathing. And if you feel yourself naturally, as you spend some time with your breath, wanting to breathe a little deeper, that's fine. Let your body do what it would like to naturally do. And if your mind wanders away, and it probably will, just bring it back to the breath. We'll take 3 more breaths together. All right, and I'll welcome us back to the room. So I want to invite you, if you are a chat box user, put a note in the chat if you feel any different from before we notice the breath to after. Put a note in the chat capturing that. And I mentioned while we were breathing that your mind will probably wander. And I really mean that. I know for myself when, I have always acknowledged that meditation is something I should be doing. I knew the science. And I just thought I was bad at it. It didn't seem like something that I was good at. It didn't seem like, something I had the patience for. I just always felt like I was doing it wrong. And then the pandemic happened and I spent a lot of time alone. and I joined a meditation community over Zoom. And you know what I learned? Most people are bad at meditation. Everyone's mind wanders, even the monks who spend a lot of time doing this. And that is just naturally a part of it. And to hear that really released me from that place of, oh, I'm bad at this. Oh, this isn't for me. Because everyone does it. And that's why it's called a practice, right? We sit down and we practice this again and again and again. And that's where the benefits lie. The benefits don't lie in being perfect at meditation because no one is. No one is. The benefits that I shared with you earlier occur when we practice it again and again. I read somewhere that meditation is the practice of remembering. And I love that because I know I'm breathing all day, right? For me, my ears ring. And of course, it wasn't until the pandemic when I started meditating that I even noticed that my ears ring. And now it's become when I take a deep breath during the day and I hear my ear ringing, I'm like, oh, yes, this is the present moment. And it's actually become part of my practice to remember what my present moment is. And so even those kind of unpleasant elements that we may label as unpleasant in our daily experience can really be woven in to our grounding in a way that's very helpful. I want to invite you now to practice a body scan with me. So whether you're seated, laying down, standing, wherever you are, I want to invite you, we're going to focus our attention on one body part at a time, and I'll lead us through it. Try not to jump ahead, just follow along. And the invitation is, as I name each part, just notice any physical sensations going on there. No judgment, reacting to them. And if you do, that's okay. That's okay. We're not, no way to do this wrong. So we are going to start with the tops of our head. Again, that's something that's been with you all day. Just notice the top of your head right now. And then we'll move down to the temples. Are they tight? How are they feeling? Then we'll move to the face. Notice your eyes, to your nose. And we'll go down to the jaw. Again, is it loose? Is it a little taut? Just noticing. And let's go to the ears. Let's notice your ears right now. Then we'll go down the neck to the shoulders. And we'll go down our left arm first. Let's travel down to the elbow. And then continue to the hands. And let's notice each finger on our left hand. It's bringing your awareness to the pinky, the ring, the middle, the pointer, and the thumb. If it's easier for you, you can give each one a little wiggle as you go, just to help ground you in that. Let's go to the right arm now, starting at the shoulder. Traveling to the elbow. And then to the hand. And the pinky, the ring, the middle, the pointer, and the thumb. And then back to the shoulders, and we'll start going down the torso. I want to invite you, we'll focus on the spine. Follow the spine down to your hips. And circle around to the front. How is your belly? Is your belly tight right now or soft? Just noticing. And to the bum, feel your weight in the chair. We'll do the left leg first. Let's head down the left thigh to the knee. And then down to the ankle. To the foot and each toe. Big, middles, and pinky. Let's go back up to the hips and do the same with the right leg. Down the thigh to the knee. Then down to the foot. And each toe. And lastly, notice your feet on the floor or wherever they are. Just notice them really grounding in whatever surface that they're touching. We'll take a deep breath together and return to the space. Again, if you're a chat user, I welcome you to put any comments in the chat about your experience with that exercise. And what I love about the body scan is you can make it as involved or short as you need it to be. So that was a kind of more involved version of it because we have the time together today. And let's say you don't have as much time as we used for that. You can just start at the top of your head and hit whatever the main points are for you. For me, I always want to notice my shoulders because they're always tight and my belly's always hard, right? So those are my kind of main points. And then I end with my feet on the ground when I only have a quick amount of time. And if you are someone who really connects with the earth, who finds the earth comforting, you can continue going. When you reach the ground, you feel your feet on the ground, continue going and visualize really, sending roots into the earth and feeling that kind of energy come up for you. Now, that's not for everyone. That's fine. Staying grounded in your body is just as good. One place that I've heard really great feedback about the body scan is for anyone who has trouble falling asleep at night. If you're laying in bed and you're experiencing a lot of kind of swirling thoughts and your mind is everywhere except where you're at right now, because I know that's my experience. When I can't sleep, I'm thinking about everything else. And then I'm freaking out because, oh, I'm not asleep yet. And the body scan can be a very powerful tool. And you're welcome to start at the bottoms of your feet, the top of your head, again, whatever makes sense for you, but just guiding yourself through the body scan. I've gotten really strong feedback that that is helpful when folks have difficulty falling asleep. All right. Movement is another opportunity for mindfulness. Again, something that we participate in every day, whether you're moving from point A to point B, or maybe you're listening to this presentation. I see, people are writing or just kind of stretching, moving around, or not moving. All of this is an opportunity to notice the sensation going on in our bodies. And so these sensations include things like the breath, our body movements, and our surroundings, right? My experience of walking on a carpet is different than walking on the hardwood. And do I actually notice when I step from the carpet to the hardwood in that moment? And how does my body reacting to that? I think one of the greatest gifts that I've personally been given in terms of learning meditation is the idea of curiosity. And curiosity being one of the kind of greatest strengths that we can bring and practice in order to bring meditation and mindfulness into our daily lives. Being curious about every experience. It could be something that you do a million times. Like for me, it's making the coffee. I make the coffee every day, sometimes twice or 3 times a day, depending on the day. And when I'm able to be in the moment, or when I notice my thoughts swirling around, I am able to say, okay, Curiosity, what's this smell like right now? Or, what's that spot on the wall, right? Just really pausing and taking in what's around you by asking curious questions as if you've never done it before, which sounds, I think, a little silly. And I think you all may have heard of the idea of really bringing playfulness. Children have a kind of wonder that we could only ever want as adults. Guess what? That's a way to bring it in and really benefit from it, is through a mindfulness perspective. So I want to invite us, if you're able, you're welcome to stand up and stretch. I'm going to sit in the chair and stretch, and we're just going to take about 30 seconds to stretch. And I want to invite you to practice mindfulness. Notice your breath right now as you're moving around. Notice your body moving. What is being pulled? What is being pushed? Is it comfortable? Does it feel good? Is there a little bit of warmth there as you move around? Just notice it. And how is this movement interacting with maybe the chair you're sitting in or the floor underneath you? All right, and we'll return. If you are someone, I guess, regardless of how you move around, whether it's walking, whether it's using your arms, or however it may be, really noticing the movement involved from getting from point A to point B. That's going to be my challenge to you after our time together today. When you leave this presentation and you physically move to your next thing, notice your body doing it. Okay, whether it's the feet on your feet on the floor, whether it's your hands on wheels, whatever it may be, notice your body doing it and bring that awareness with you as you enter your next engagement. Eating is another opportunity for mindfulness, something else we do quite often. We can slow down our experience of eating. And, I won't invite us to practice this right now, but this is a challenge for you later as you enter your next meal. Pay attention to the sensations of holding whatever it is, smelling, tasting, chewing, swallowing, all the way through, whether it's a drink, whether it's a food. Really notice it and name those sensations as you go. So let's practice a naming exercise now, because I think I've been saying that a bit lately. This is hands down my favorite exercise. When I am very busy, I try to practice this a couple times a day to return me to the moment. And it is grounded in our senses. And so I want to invite us now, I'll guide us through this. Look around your environment and name for yourself 5 things you can see. Now, please be specific, not white wall, but find that scuff on the white wall. Be very specific in 5 things you can name for yourself in your environment right now. And now I want to invite you to acknowledge 4 things that you can touch around you. Again, specific as possible. Three things that you can hear. 2 things that you can smell. And 1 thing that you can taste. What's the inside of your mouth taste like right now? For better or for worse, no judgment. Let's take a deep breath together and come back to the room. Again, I invite you to put any thoughts in the chat about that exercise. And I'll name that this exercise is malleable. So maybe you, maybe you have a particular sense that isn't as easy to interact with as another one. Edit the exercise so it is more meaningful to you to engage the senses that you most identify with. And, for me, I personally find it easier to find 3 things that I can hear because my ear's always ringing. Maybe you find it easier to find 3 things you can smell. Shift them around as you need, okay? And silence is definitely something. The absence is definitely something to name too. So in our last couple minutes, I want to invite us to think about how we can use our senses throughout the day to really passively control that stress hormone. It's going to show up. That's how our bodies work. How can we actively, beyond these exercises that we've practiced so far, what kinds of things can we connect with throughout the day to calm this cortisol? And the senses are such a strong tool for this. Connect with your sight. Regardless of if you're actually doing that exercise of finding 5 things, just bring that curiosity to your environment wherever you are. Look at the sky. Notice the colors in your space around you. Maybe if you are using your technology a lot, make it a photo that you can't get enough of. And if you are maybe in an in-between place where you're experiencing some boredom or waiting, tap into that curiosity. What's around me? What's interesting? It wasn't until I started connecting with sight that I realized my local grocery store has a train set going around the ceiling. A train set. How cool is that? I never looked up. Smell is another opportunity. There are scents in our environments, and they change depending on what part of the environment you're in. I purposely hung a dried lavender wreath by the door to the kitchen so it smacks me in the face every time I enter the kitchen. It reminds me that I'm changing spaces. Also, outside, nature is full of passive elements that engage our senses. That's why that's the major reason that research indicates being outside in nature is so impactful on our cortisol levels, is that it really engages us in that passive attention kind of way in all of these areas and helps to activate that parasympathetic response system accordingly. Our sense of taste is something that you can tap into at choice, right? We choose to ingest things, really notice the experience of it. If you are in a place and you're like, man, I really need uh, to move my focus from this to something else, go get your favorite fruit, pour yourself a drink, and really make that an experience for yourself. That's something you can tap to by choice at any time. Touch as well. Maybe you're not in a place where you can pour a drink, but you are sitting in a chair. Even if it's not your chair, maybe it's the waiting room chair at the doctor's office. Really engaging with, what does this chair feel like? Man, it's really uncomfortable. Hey, you're noticing it. And that's the practice. Okay, what about it is so uncomfortable? Ask those curiosity questions. And I've noticed for myself, the more curious I've become, the more I practice this curiosity, I don't take things so seriously anymore. I laugh a lot more often at things that maybe would have made me angry in the past. Sound is something we can tap into, whether it's through music or the environment around us. I live on a pretty busy street, and it could annoy me that there are cars going up and down the road pretty often. And when you tune into the environment, I'm able to be curious and say, oh, 1, 2, right? And I start counting them and listening to them fade. And it becomes almost like the ocean waves in a way, having that curiosity lens. There are lots of mindfulness apps that are available if you are someone who prefers to be guided through a meditation. And I'll just name, sometimes we need different things depending on our state of mind. For me, I find it very helpful to have a guided meditation in the morning because I haven't had my coffee yet. And I am not able to focus very well. And so having that someone, guide me through it is much more impactful for me than sitting there falling asleep while I'm trying to breathe. Books are available at your local library that talk about a lot of the research that I've mentioned and have some additional kind of I've told you about my experience with mindfulness. There's lots of folks writing about their experiences and what they find helpful. Yoga movement classes are something, if you really identify with movement meditation, that is a tool that's available to you. I know that most YMCAs offer yoga classes. Journaling is another opportunity. We can practice that non-judgmental approach through writing. And an emotion wheel can be a helpful tool. I've mentioned the idea of naming as specifically as possible as part of this. And in the English language, we don't have a lot of great words to accurately describe our emotional experience a lot of times. And so an emotion wheel can be a great tool for kind of showing us what the options are. So we can tune into each of them and say, oh, am I, feeling this, or is this anxious, or is this morose, right? And we can kind of taste the words and figure out which one best fits our experience and choose to use that word accordingly. Gratitude, this is a pretty popular mindfulness practice that I bet a lot of you have heard of, and it is rightfully so. Its popularity is well earned. Gratitude can be a very strong journaling tool. And it doesn't have to be a lot, just 3 things that you're grateful for every day, or even less. For myself, I use a um, free app that lets me put a picture and a little word every day. Most of my gratitude entries are of my dog, and I get to look back on all the pictures and the little memory that I wrote, and it makes me smile to look back on them. And that's part of the practice. As I mentioned, music can be very powerful. And maybe the watching the breath when your mind wanders and coming back to the breath, maybe that's not something you're identifying with, and that's fine. Music can be just as powerful. Put the song on and really pay attention to it. And when your mind starts to wander, bring it back to the song. And visualizing is a very powerful tool as well. I hinted at this with imagining kind of roots coming from the soles of your feet into the ground as part of that exercise. But it can be as simple as the idea of the happy place, right? Um, Thinking about a memory. For me, it's driving through the mountains in northern Pennsylvania and the sunrise over top of it. Thinking about whatever You know, it could be a beautiful place, it could be some loved ones that are in that place, but really capturing that and returning to it can be a powerful grounding experience as well. And again, focusing on the details, engaging as many senses as you can in that memory. That's where the grounding is most powerful. So let me see real quick. Here's an example of an emotion wheel. So as I mentioned, emotion wheels are an opportunity to identify different words for the experience. And you can see the way that it's used is we start in the middle to try to find the bucket that our feeling falls into. Am I feeling sad? Am I feeling angry? Right? And we figure out which one of these buckets most likely aligns, and then we can take a step out. So let's say I'm feeling, let's say embarrassed. So I identify embarrassed, and then I take a step out and I ask myself, curiosity, am I more identifying with disrespected, worthless, guilty, ashamed, inferior? And curiosity, asking that question, and then let's say I'm feeling disrespected, you see it branches out in the third row to 2 more options, okay? And maybe you read both of those and you're like, no, that's really not it. Let me explore the other ones. That's what this is for, okay? And it's an opportunity to explore and give some kind of hard vocabulary to that curiosity that you're expressing for yourself and your emotions. So emotion wheels, this is one focused on, again, that kind of buckets of afraid, sad, dislike, angry. But there are positive affect wheels. There are all kinds of different wheels. You can find ones that have both of them. You can find ones that are just on positive and negative, right? So I invite you to check out humansystems.co /emotion wheels. And they have them available for free download in a variety of different formats. All right. And with that, we are at the end of our time together. So I will stop there with these additional resources on the screen.
Casey, this was really super. It's amazing how something like mindfulness can really impact you in such positive ways. And with most of our community being transplant recipients, there is still a good amount of pain involved in what people deal with in their daily lives. So if these are some practices that people can employ to help them deal and maybe manage pain better, I think this is really worthwhile for everyone to kind of try out, give a go. So this was great. Thank you.